The ballroom gleamed like a cathedral built for the worship of wealth. Crystal chandeliers spilled gold across marble floors, and violins floated over the murmur of elite laughter. Lily Hart stood near the edge of the crowd, her gown simple but elegant, cream silk among sequins, calm among chaos. She had spent weeks helping Damian Cole plan this night, the merger celebration that would crown him king among his corporate friends. He had promised it would be their moment. From where she stood, it looked like it already was his. He moved through the crowd like he owned it, charismatic, magnetic, dangerous in the way only men certain of their power can be. He greeted partners, toasted investors, leaned close to whisper jokes that made people laugh too loud. Every eye followed him. Every smile reflected him. Lily tried to keep her steady, clutching her champagne glass like a lifeline. Damian caught her gaze across the room. He smiled that polished smile, the one that had once felt like home, and lifted his glass. She smiled back, unsure why the gesture suddenly felt rehearsed. She'd met him 3 years ago, when she was still a junior PR strategist working double shifts at an agency that catered to men like him. He'd seen her potential, her hunger, her precision, and he'd loved her for them. Or at least she thought he had. Now, as Damian's world glittered around her, she realized she had mistaken visibility for value. The glittering setup, the party of masks, the speeches began. Crystal cutlery chimed. Photographers circled. The night smelled of money and ambition. Damian stood at the podium, bathed in champagne light. Tonight, he began, we celebrate not just business, but transformation. The kind of transformation that makes dreams into dividends. Applause rippled. Lily smiled, proud. He looked down at her. And speaking of transformations, her heart lifted. He was going to thank her. He had to. 3 years ago, I met someone who couldn't tell the difference between a merger and a martini, but I saw potential. Raw, unpolished potential. A project, if you will. Laughter scattered like broken glass. He smiled wider. Let's just say some charity cases pay off beautifully. The laughter grew louder. Lily froze. Her wine glass trembled in her hand. A thin crack split the rim, catching the light. He kept talking, his words sugar-coated with cruelty. She keeps me grounded, he added. Reminds me where I came from. And how far I've climbed. Applause, flashbulbs, laughter again. And in that moment, Lily realized something horrifying. This wasn't an impulsive insult. It was a performance. The public betrayal. A toast of lies. Don't take it personally, murmured a woman beside her, a socialite dripping in diamonds. Men like him need to prove they're untouchable. Consider it a compliment. Lily turned to her slowly. A compliment for him, she said, voice steady, a scar for me. Across the room, Damian raised his glass for another toast. To those who helped me get here, especially my muse. Her name hung in the air like a stain. Evan Blake, Damian's oldest friend and business partner, looked away. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Lily stood there for another heartbeat, the applause echoing like thunder in her chest. Then she placed her cracked glass on the table and walked out. The silent exit. Walking out of gold. Every step across the marble floor felt like walking through years of illusions. The hall blurred around her. Perfume, laughter, velvet curtains, chandeliers spinning in slow motion. Cameras caught flashes of her departure, mistaking heartbreak for mystery. Damian didn't follow. Outside, the city air bit cold against her skin. She could still hear his voice echoing faintly through the open doors. That same voice that once whispered love, now coded in arrogance. Humiliation, she thought, is the price of trusting the wrong audience. By the time she reached her apartment, the night had already gone viral. Clips of Damian's charming roast circulated online, commenters calling it hilarious, brave, authentic. None of them saw the tremor in her hands. None of them heard her heartbreak. The call that changed everything. Her phone rang at 1:13 a.m. Lily? Evan's voice. She hesitated before answering. If you're calling to apologize for your friend, I'm calling because I need to tell you the truth. He interrupted. Tonight wasn't an accident. Silence. What do you mean?
I mean, Damien needed a distraction. There's an SEC audit coming. He's been moving client money through shell accounts for months. You were his distraction, something loud enough to drown the noise. Her throat tightened. You're lying. I wish I was. Check your email. The call ended. A minute later, her inbox pinged. A forwarded document. Internal communication logs. Financial transfers. Damien's name on every line. Her humiliation had been more than personal. It had been strategic. Her hand shook as she scrolled, reading message after message between Damien and his CFO. Press distraction ready? Yes, going to make it public tonight. Tears didn't come, only clarity. That night, the man I loved exposed me, but his best friend exposed the truth. The mirror scene. Rage becomes calculation. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of her own heartbeat. Lily stood before the full-length mirror near her closet. Her reflection looked like a stranger. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, eyes hollowed by realization. She lifted her cracked champagne glass from her purse, one last reminder of the night. She placed it on her vanity beside her reflection. You thought breaking me in public would make me small, she whispered. You forgot. I know what you hide in private. For the first time, she smiled. Not a smile of denial, a smile of design. She wiped the makeup from her face, tied her hair back, opened her laptop. Files, receipts, client reports, all the pieces of Damien's empire she'd once helped polish. Her fingers began to move. She wasn't crying. She was auditing. Outside, dawn began to bleed through the blinds, staining the glass gold again. But this gold wasn't luxury. It was warning. The phone buzzed once more. A message from Evan. Be careful, you don't know how deep this goes. She replied, I will, and neither does he. The glass on her vanity caught the rising sun, splitting it into shards across her reflection. He made me the joke of the night, but I was already writing his punchline.
The digital ghost, replaying the night. The sun was up, but Lily hadn't moved from her chair. Her laptop screen glowed against the dim apartment, the city's noise muffled beneath her rising pulse. She had replayed the gala video 15 times already. Every click was a knife, laughter cutting deeper, replaying her own humiliation from every angle strangers had filmed it. She watched Damien grin under the chandelier lights, champagne in hand, while his friends roared with laughter. She zoomed in, frame by frame, analyzing faces she had once called friends. At first it hurt. Then something shifted. Her tears dried mid-blink. Her mind adjusted, like a camera switching focus. On the 12th replay, she noticed Evan. He wasn't laughing. He was watching Damien, not with amusement, but with unease. Every time Damien raised his glass, Evan's jaw tightened. Each cruel joke came after a subtle cue. A nod, a glance, a look towards someone filming it. It wasn't spontaneous. It was staged. Her fingers paused above the keyboard. She whispered, You rehearsed it. Suddenly, she stopped seeing the party as an event. She saw it as a strategy. The glittering crowd became moving data points. The laughter became patterns of manipulation. Her heartbreak turned forensic. She leaned closer to the screen, the blue glow painting her face with precision. Somewhere between humiliation and logic, she found her new purpose, to decode him. While he was chasing champagne, I was tracing transactions. The ally emerges, Evan's confession. By evening, she received a message from Evan. Meet me, somewhere quiet. They met in a half-empty cafe on the Lower East Side, the kind of place where people disappear between espresso cups. Evan looked different from the confident man at the gala. His tie was gone, his eyes rimmed with guilt. He didn't even sit until she did. He didn't know he'd go that far, he said. Lily stirred her coffee without looking up. You knew enough to stay silent. He sighed. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, she said softly. You just picked profit. He rubbed his temples. You don't understand. Damien's in deeper trouble than you think. That night wasn't about you. It was about survival. Then why make me the distraction? Evan's silence answered her before his words did. Finally, he whispered, The SEC is investigating him for insider trading. Someone tipped them off last month. He needed noise, something viral to bury the story. You were the noise. Lily laughed. Short, sharp, humorless. So I was his headline shield. Lily, he'll destroy anyone who threatens his image, he said. He's already cleaning up digital trails, shutting down shell accounts, moving assets. Then he's not fast enough, she replied. He looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean, I already have his blueprints. He blinked. What? She showed him her phone. The emails he had forwarded that night. You gave me the spark. I'll light the fire. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he smiled faintly, a flicker of admiration in his guilt. You sound like him. No, she said. I sound like what he taught me to be. He built his empire on silence, but I learned to make the silence speak. The secret files. Numbers don't lie. Night after night, Lily became a ghost haunting her own laptop. The room was dark except for the screens, lines of code, encrypted documents, offshore accounts. Her marketing background became her weapon. Every campaign she had ever built had been about patterns, reading human behavior, predicting reactions, controlling perception. Now she used that same skill to dissect Damien's empire. She traced false invoices back to hidden accounts in the Cayman Islands, watched his corporate shell companies form a perfect web, and at the center of that web, Damien's name pulsed like a heartbeat. Each discovery brought a surge of grim satisfaction. Each click erased another ounce of grief. When exhausting blurred her vision, she stared at her reflection in the laptop screen, her eyes glowing blue in the dim light. No longer the broken girl from the gala, a strategist reborn. She began saving evidence into encrypted folders, labeling them coldly. Asset Shift 14A, Shell Route Log 7, Gala Pre-Plan Footage. Each file was a countdown. Outside her window, Chicago lights flickered like stars caught in smog, a city thriving on deceit. She whispered to it, "Your king is rotting from the crown down." Truth doesn't whisper. It records, it timestamps, it waits. The deeper truth. Even friends have motives. Evan began visiting more often, sometimes to help, sometimes to linger. They worked side by side, decoding bank statements, tracing dummy corporations, cross-referencing leak emails. He admired her focus, her calm precision. But behind his helpful tone, he sensed something darker. One night, after hours of silent work, he caught him watching her reflection in the window. "Why are you really helping me?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because he humiliated you. Because he deserves to fall. Or because you want his seat when he does." He met her eyes. "Maybe both." She nodded slowly. "Then let's be honest. You want revenge. I want closure. We'll use each other until we get both." For a moment there was mutual respect, the kind that burns like gasoline. But later, as he left, she noticed his reflection linger in her screen longer than his body did. She whispered to herself, "Every savior hides a sin, and every truth needs a witness. Even loyalty has fingerprints, and his were all over my downfall." Decision scene. The audit begins. At dawn, Lily sat in her apartment surrounded by notes, open laptops, and glowing monitors. She had mapped every route of Damien's empire, from investors to fake charities to shell corporations. Everything connected. Every lie had coordinates. She opened a new folder on her desktop. Title, Cole_Justice. Inside it, she began compiling her final collection. Every proof, every betrayal, every recorded truth. She wasn't doing this out of vengeance anymore. She was doing it because it was right. Her eyes flickered to the window, the skyline still asleep. Somewhere out there, Damien was sipping coffee, believing the world still belonged to him. She smiled faintly. "You always said Dad tells the story," she murmured. "You just forgot who was writing it." The reflection in her laptop was calm, surgical, unstoppable. "He thought I'd cry about the past, but I was already calculating his future." The plan in motion. Blueprint of revenge. The walls of Lily's apartment had transformed into a war room. Charts, photos, receipts, and post-its covered every surface, a constellation of deceit. At its center, Damien Cole's name sat circled in red. Evans stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching her pin the last piece, a photograph of the upcoming Cole Group Gala, titled, "A Decade of Integrity." The irony was exquisite. "That's when we end him," Lily said. Evan nodded cautiously. "You sure you're ready to face him again?" She smiled faintly. "I've been facing him every night in my head. This time, he'll see me." They had a plan. elegant and merciless. Evan would funnel her the company's internal reports through a secure proxy. Lily would schedule a live feed leak during Damien's keynote speech, turning his own stage into a confession booth. Her fingers traced the lines on her corkboard like blueprints of a building she was about to demolish. "Every empire has an exit wound," she murmured. "And what's yours?" She smiled without warmth. "He'll find out when I'm gone." The air between them pulsed with focus and unspoken guilt. It wasn't vengeance anymore. It was mathematics. A calculated dismantling of deceit. Blueprints aren't just for building empires, they're for bringing them down with precision. The return. Face the enemy. Fate, or perhaps arrogance, brought Damien back into her orbit sooner than planned. A week before the gala, she attended a charity art auction. The crowd was the same golden breed: CEOs, models, politicians. Faces she once smiled at before realizing they all smiled with teeth. Halfway through the event, she heard the familiar voice. Smooth, controlled, poison in velvet. "Lily." She turned slowly. Damien stood there, perfect suit, same confidence that had once made her weak. But this time, she wasn't shaking. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said, eyes flicking to her neckline, then her ringless hand. "Still finding yourself?" "Actually," she said, tilting her head, "I found something better. Perspective." He chuckled. "So you're still angry?" "Not at all. I'm focused." For a moment, his smile faltered. "You were always dangerous when you said it like that." The conversation felt like chess played with razor blades. He leaned closer. "I made mistakes that night, Lily. I shouldn't have let things go that far." "You mean the part where you called me your charity case? Or the part where you made sure every camera caught it?" He hesitated, the first crack in his facade. Then, with that same arrogance, he smirked. "If I wanted to humiliate you, I'd do it in private." She smiled, stepping closer. "Maybe forgiveness is profitable." He blinked. "What?" "You'll find out soon." And she walked away, heels clicking like gunshots. Forgiveness is a mask, and mine came with teeth. The leverage, Evan's secret. Back at the apartment, tension simmered between her and Evan. He paced while she worked, his nerves louder than words. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," he lied. She turned to face him. "We're past that stage." He sighed, shoulders heavy. "If you knew what I'd done, you'd throw me out right now. I already assume you've done plenty." He exhaled, defeated. "I helped Damien. I covered the first audit he rigged 2 years ago. If I hadn't, he would have buried me too." The confession hung in the air like smoke. Lily didn't flinch. "So this isn't redemption for you, it's insurance." "Maybe both," he admitted. "But I'm risking everything for this now. My job, my name." She interrupted quietly. "Your soul was gone the moment you watched him destroy me and said nothing." He winced, but she wasn't cruel, just factual. Silence stretched. Then she said, "We use it." "What?" "Your guilt, your access, every password he still trusts you with." He looked at her in awe, half afraid, half captivated. "You've changed." "No, I just stopped pretending softness was strength." Guilt is just loyalty that came too late, but it's still a weapon. The trap tightens. Countdown to chaos. The week of the gala was a blur of secrets. Lily disguised herself in calm professionalism, the ghost of a woman Damien once loved, now haunting his inbox. Her fake apology email had been delivered. "You were right. Let's talk after your keynote." He replied within minutes. "I knew you'd come around." It was almost too easy. Behind the scenes, Evan installed backdoor access to the internal servers. At exactly 9:45 p.m. during the gala's live stream, Damien's integrity presentation would be interrupted, replaced by video evidence of his financial crimes and private correspondence with bribed regulators. It would be poetic, public, permanent. But then things began to shift. Damien hired investigators. A shadowed car began parking near Lily's apartment. Her phone buzzed with unknown numbers. Someone had broken into her email drafts and restored deleted messages. Evan urged her to abort. He's getting suspicious. She shook her head. That means we're close. But if he finds out, then he'll do what he always does, underestimate me. Her heart beat like a clock inside a vault. Each second mattered. The closer I got to his truth, the louder my heart counted down. The breaking point. Love or justice? The night before the gala, Evan stayed behind. The room was quiet except for the hum of hard drives syncing evidence to encrypted clouds. He watched her move, calm, precise, unstoppable. After this, he said softly, what then? I'd disappear. You could stay. We could build something real. Not like him, not like before. She stopped typing. Evan, I know you don't feel the same, but I need you to know, if this takes me down too, I don't care. You're the only person who's ever made me believe redemption exists. She turned to him, eyes sharp but soft at the edges. Love isn't redemption, Evan. It's repetition, and I've already been through it once. He looked away, broken but accepting. She walked past him, whispering, love is only pure when it doesn't need a witness. She returned to her laptop, clicked Save All Files, and closed the lid. Outside, the city exhaled, neon lights pulsing like nerves under skin. Tomorrow, the empire would crumble, and no one would see it coming. He once said I couldn't handle the numbers. Now, they'll handle him.
The return to the scene 1 year later. The world had moved on, or so Damien Cole believed. A year had polished his reputation again. New deals, new headlines, new lies. He had rebranded scandal into strategy, rewriting history the way powerful men do. But that night, under the chandeliers of the Metropolitan Grand Hall, his empire would meet its final truth. Lily Hart stood at the entrance, her reflection multiplied in gold and glass. The same marble floors that once echoed her humiliation now held her steady steps. A year ago, she had left in tears. Tonight, she returned in silence. She wore gold, the same color as that night, but this time it wasn't borrowed luxury. It was armor. Her hair pinned high, her gaze calm, her presence commanding. Guests whispered her name like a rumor that refused to die. Isn't that... Didn't she... She looks different. She smiled faintly. Different is the point. Across the room, Damien stood at the podium, basking in the kind of applause that came with denial. He didn't see her yet. He was too busy thanking sponsors, too busy calling himself self-made, too busy rewriting the narrative. The air smelled of perfume and politics. The sound of clinking glasses masked the undercurrent of something waiting, something electric. Evan was already in position in a small side booth, laptop open, fingers hovering over the command line. The final upload was ready. The servers were synced. He glanced at Lily's silhouette from afar and whispered, "Showtime." He once made me invisible under the spotlight. Tonight, the light belongs to me. The broadcast, when truth walks on stage. Damien's speech began smoothly. Integrity, he said, isn't something you're born with. It's something you prove. Laughter, polite applause. Behind him, the massive LED screens displayed a montage of the company's success. Clean logos, philanthropic projects, media headlines. Then mid-sentence, the visuals flickered. Once. Twice. Then black. The audience murmured. Damien frowned, glancing toward the tech crew. And then the first image appeared. An email. To Damien Cole. From board member confidential. Subject, insider move approved. Followed by numbers, charts, transfers, offshore accounts. The music died. The air changed. Lily stood perfectly still, eyes locked on him as confusion rippled through the crowd. Then came the videos. Clips of Damien laughing about hiding money better than mistakes, bragging in a drunken dinner about turning charity funds into profit. Every word he had ever used to demean others was now evidence against him. Evan pressed execute all files. The second wave hit. PDFs, contracts, bank statements, each one carrying his name. Damien's face drained of color. He stopped this, he barked, "Cut the feed!" No one moved. Cameras flashed. Reporters began to stand. He once made me invisible under the spotlight. Tonight, the light belongs to me. The collapse. The spotlight burns. Security scrambled near the stage. Damien ripped the microphone cord, shouting over the confusion. "This is fake! None of this is real!" But the documents bore his digital signature. The timestamps matched the financial quarter. The truth didn't need volume, it had proof. One journalist yelled, "Mr. Cole, can you confirm these transfers to offshore accounts?" Another shouted, "What about the charity fraud?" His voice cracked, "This is manipulation, a setup." Then the crowd parted. 3 men in suits stepped forward, federal investigators, badges glinting under the chandeliers. "Mr. Damian Cole, you're under investigation by the SEC. You'll need to come with us." The cameras rolled, and in that instant, the gala turned into a courtroom. Evan watched from his booth, frozen between triumph and guilt. Lily watched from the edge of the crowd, face unreadable, calm in chaos. The room's gold light now looked harsh, burning rather than shining. Damian's voice faltered. "Lily, you did this!" For the first time, she stepped forward. "No," she said quietly, "you did." The agents led him off stage, his polished shoes scuffed against the same marble floor where her heels once echoed in shame. The stage that crowned him once now carved his confession in gold. The exit, silent victory. The event dispersed like smoke after an explosion. Reporters flooded the exits, microphones outstretched, hungry for fragments of a fallen god. Lily walked through the chaos, her expression serene, as though she were simply leaving a concert that had played too long. Outside, the air was cooler, quieter. Cameras flashed from across the street, but she didn't stop for any of them. Behind her, Damian was escorted out in handcuffs. The city lights painted his defeat in flashing red and blue. As he passed, he whispered hoarsely, "You used me!" She turned slightly, eyes gleaming in the police light. "I learned from the best." For a second, he almost smiled, admiration twisted into irony. Then he was gone. The marble hallway behind her looked the same as before, but this time she wasn't reflected in tears. She was reflected in victory. The same marble that witnessed my humiliation now echoed my grace. The last goodbye. Forgiven but not forgotten. Evan found her standing by the entrance, away from the flashing lights. His expression was hollow, relief mixed with the ache of everything lost. "It's done," he said. She nodded. It was done the moment he chose pride over truth. "You should feel proud," he said quietly. "You ended a monster." She shook her head. "No, Evan, I ended a cycle." He hesitated. "Then what happens to us?" She smiled faintly. "We go back to being who we were before we thought we needed monsters to feel alive." He wanted to ask her to stay, to build something, to start again, but she was already turning toward the waiting car. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." And she walked away, not running, not hiding, just leaving. Evan stood under the fading glow of the gala lights, watching her disappear into the city that once buried her and now carried her name in whispers. The same spotlight he used to expose me now lit his ruin and my rebirth.
The New Beginning, Heart Integrity Group. A year later, the skyline of Chicago glowed softer, less like fire, more like forgiveness. The storm had passed, at least the kind that screamed. What remained was quiet, methodical rebuilding. In a renovated loft overlooking the river, Lily Hart unlocked the door to her new world. Frosted glass read, Heart Integrity Group, Consulting, Compliance, Courage. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and purpose. Stacks of case files lined the desk, whistleblower accounts, investigative reports, confidential letters from people afraid but ready to speak. Where once she'd handled campaigns and branding for Damian's empire, she now guided others in dismantling corruption with facts, not fury. Her office wall displayed one thing, a broken champagne glass mounted in a simple black frame. Beneath it, an engraved plaque read, Silence is expensive. Truth pays better. Every morning she touched it lightly, as if acknowledging an old scar that had finally healed. An assistant entered, young, confident, idealistic. "Miss Hart, the Marshall case is ready." "Good. Let's make sure their silence ends on their terms." The assistant smiled. "You really mean it when you say justice isn't about revenge, don't you?" Lily paused, then smiled softly. "Justice is just truth, spoken out loud. He once told me silence was power. I learned speaking clearly was stronger." The visit, Evan's redemption. Late afternoon. The office quieted, sunlight slanting through amber blinds. Lily stood by the window reviewing new client files, when a familiar voice broke the stillness. "Still chasing the truth?" She turned. Evan Blake stood in the doorway. Older, calmer, a man who had learned to live with the ghosts he helped create. He handed her a small envelope, embossed with a foreign consultancy logo. European Ethics Council. They actually listen when I speak now. Lily smiled. "Redemption looks good on you." He shrugged. You turned revenge into reform. That's rarer than forgiveness. They sat across from each other, silence heavy but peaceful this time. I still replay that night sometimes, wonder if I could have stopped it sooner. You couldn't, she said gently. Some men need to fall in public because that's the only way they'll ever hear the echo. He studied her, the woman he had once betrayed by omission, now stronger than either of them imagined. You saved me, Lily. She shook her head. No, Evan, you saved yourself by finally choosing to tell the truth. He stood, buttoning his coat. You know, he once told me he'd own your voice, forever. Lily smiled faintly. He tried, but I built an empire from it. He tried to own my voice. I built an empire from it. The reflection. Closure with self. That evening, after everyone left, Lily locked the office and walked home through the quiet streets. The city's rhythm had changed. Sirens softer, neon reflections replaced by steady lamplight. When she reached her apartment, she paused at the mirror. The same one she'd stared into a year ago, eyes swollen with betrayal. It was whole again now. No cracks, no shards, no trembling reflection. She stood before it, the light of the city behind her, and whispered, You were right, Damien. Data does tell a story. But you never realized, so do consequences. For a long time, she just looked at herself. Really looked. Not searching for damage, but for proof of survival. Her face was still the same, but the eyes, they no longer begged for understanding. They witnessed it. The woman in the mirror wasn't broken. She was documented proof that pain can file for victory. The final letter. A debt repaid. One morning, her assistant entered carrying an envelope. No sender, just your name. Lily recognized the handwriting immediately. Sharp, controlled, the kind that once signed million-dollar deals and divorce papers alike. Damien Cole. He was serving a 10-year sentence in a minimum security prison, trading boardrooms for therapy circles. She stared at the letter, the ink of old ghosts. Without opening it, she walked to the terrace, the city stretching endless below. She struck a match. Flame licked the paper's edges, curling it into ash. The wind carried his words away before they could stain her again. Some letters are apologies. Others are just ghosts asking for rent. Legacy in light. Dawn. Lily sat by the window of her office, sipping coffee, watching the first light scatter over the river. Across the water, cranes moved, new buildings rising where the old ones had fallen. It reminded her of herself, rebuilt, not repaired. On her desk lay a small wooden box. Inside, her ID badge from Damien's company, the USB drive that changed everything, and the ring she once thought meant forever. She closed the lid gently, not as rejection, but remembrance. I used to think revenge was about destruction, but it's really about construction, rebuilding yourself without asking for permission. She turned toward the sunlight, voice steady. He built his world on deceit. I built mine on the ruins. She stood, straightened her jacket, and walked out of the office into the rising morning, a woman finally at peace with both her fire and her silence. He left me in the dark, but I learned to shine without permission.